a presentation here on Novacura Flow, which is our product for creating apps and solutions in M3. We're grateful to have a customer here with us to share some of their experience with the products. So we have Phillip George and Matthew Halper from Red Equipment. And then you have the partner with us too, Johan Selin from Columbus. He's going to go through some of the technical backy stuff. So let me share me again. So introductions we can check off. We just did that. We're going to start the session with Red presenting a bit about their use case. So why they came to us in Novacura and what kind of solutions they were interested in building. So we'll go through that. Then it'll come back to me. I'll do a bit of background so you can learn more about our product and what it does through that product overview. Then I'll turn it over to the more technical part with Johan to talk about the development process, how you administer the applications that you build, how you deploy them, and so on. And then we'll finish up with back to Red Equipment and talking specifically about the solution they built and some of the things they might do going forward. So for now, I'll turn it over to Red Equipment. Mike can start.
Hi. So, hi, I'm Phillip George, executive at T at Red Equipment Company. And this is a bit about us. So we provide equipment, sales, and service support, construction, mining, and associated industries. We are the oldest and largest distributors of Volvo, Hitachi, Sandwich, Belt, Barlow. And our circus technicians are world class, having won 3 all local competitions. So, we were doing field service before punching at the crowd. We were doing the just Excel timesheets. And by Excel timesheet, exactly what it says. We had the Excel template. Our service technicians were at the job site. They were input and kind in Excel spreadsheet. Hopefully, they be ID, they didn't want them to do it while they're on the job site. It would easily happen. Sometimes those timesheets weren't done to follow the day, sometimes several days. Technicians often fail to report the EREPs. So that reliability time that's in those nipples. OLEX for inspections were not collecting the needs of the vehicle level. They were the most central repository code. What they would do is they could take photos, send them via email to BS, send to master and nurse search coordinators, and then I'll tell you later that then you say there's a file share or share for anyone. I let people version it. To the fourth point here, office staff often use different systems to maintain the schedules. We had some ranges using SharePoint. For a while, we had several ranges using a product called Smart Shoot. I think it's not a range fuel, using Handmade fuel. Yeah, at least 2 options in that. What we wanted Microsoft on and processes was to build a full service application that our technicians could use via computer or via mobile device. And mobile device of choice for most of our companies, Apple, will we also have the install. And an app will work across all of us to where we could select teleportations timeline as they happen, and then also do inspections, collect photos, all that be stored before be stored in PADM, but easy access by our search bar.
All right, so what is this Novacura Flow right now? The easy summary is it's an application builder. So it lets you build custom applications, but it's low code, which basically means you don't need to be a software engineer to build these apps. So it's typically done by someone with ERP experience. If you have a somewhat technical business analyst who's familiar with M3 processes and a bit about E3 APIs, but definitely does not require software engineering type skills. And the key thing I think that differentiates us from other low-code platforms is the real-time integration with the M3 system. So these apps that you build are not standalone apps that you then have to integrate behind the scenes with M3. They're connected in real time using M3 APIs. It's almost like an alternate front end to an M3 process. So I won't go through a whole lot of details here, but why would you need Tiki like this? Why does the tool like this exist?
And basically, it is to address these unique requirements that aren't always touched on by a ERP system.
So for good reason, ERP systems are pretty generic. They work for the vast majority of processes that most companies have. But everybody's down these unique profiles. In the case of Red Equipment, it generated these timesheets that are actually required by the OEM in their case. Sometimes we run into things like I have products, and when I'm picking those products, they need to go into a specific type container for this specific customer. Rules like that I need to be able to implement. And that's where R2 comes in. So I can build a little app, for example, that runs on like the Zebra scanner that you use in the warehouse, and it has all of my specific business rules, man. And I can do that without having to have a software engineer build something. Yeah, my slides then how you advance it. The basic idea is there's several different user experiences when you build these apps. And I'm kind of backing that one slide that escaped there, but you can build them for mobile devices. So phones, tablets, either Android or iOS, Android type scanner devices, Zebra, Honeywell, and so on. And then you can use a web browser, so mobile laptops. We also have this called Portal Framer. So if you're looking for more of the dashboard type application, maybe a display that's sitting on a shop floor, or an external portal that flyers are going to come to check on your orders and update delivery dates, those things can be done with the supplier, or excuse me, the port. The other thing that we think helps to make this development process quick and easy is we've actually had this product for quite some time, launched in 2007 originally. So over those years, we've built lots of these applications outside of the ERP system, integrate with it, and we put a lot of those into the marketplace. So warehouse management, field service. We've encountered lots of these things where these external applications are really useful, and we put those in the marketplace. So when you buy a Novacura Flow and you want to create custom application, you have a starting point that does most of what you need already, and you just bake in your unique requirements into it. So I'll just walk through quickly here some of the common use case scenarios. And a lot of these are things that we have apps for in this marketplace. So like I mentioned, extremely common to have apps that are deployed on scanner devices in the warehouse. Executing inventory transaction, receiving against purchase order lines, inventory news, student count reports. All of these things are pretty easy and quick to build. And they're fully integrated with scanning. So any sort of input that you put in your app can be scanned. We can do multi-dimensional barcodes and split the values into separate fields. All those kind of things that make scanning apps easy. Field service is another common use case. You will see more about that when we talk about equipment solution. But you have useful tools there like being able to view documents of work instructions, capturing GPS locations, seeing the history of the equipment that you're working on, all on V-Mobile Festus. Manufacturing execution, another one. A lot of times these are set up in a specific work center on the shop floor, maybe like the kiosk, where the operator for coming in and reported time, issuing materials, and its manufacturing orders. That's another common one. And this is the portal framework so a lot of specs set up for suppliers to come in and provide updates, maybe customers submitting cases, service requests, or things like that. Another one that you'll see an example of is a dispatch dashboard for field service. So an easy way for managers to assign tasks to the technicians. And common use cases of the portal part of the product. Another one is AI. And a lot of what we're doing with AI is around OCR and document management. So the example I have here is reading invoices from an inbox and taking those PDFs, sending them off to an AI service that does OCR, gets the data back, and as we can review that data along with the document in the portals, right? And then once we're confirmed that the data is correct, we post that information to Infree. And then it can be done, like I said, reading from an email inbox or taking photos on the OS. And then I'll hand over to Johan to talk a bit about how you create and manage BDAPs.
Great. What they get after this presentation, so we're just going to kind of walk through what it takes to provision Novacura Flow, all the way to wanting your ass through various environments, tested periodically, and so on. So once you have Novacura installed, you will have a central hub where all your administrators will go in to manage all the applications, right? So first when you come in, we have our own page. Here you get the net release changes that Novacura puts out once we have full list. As well as we have various links that connects to the roadmap, the enhancement systems, which is much like Infort, where you can go in and vote on your enhancements and see if they're being reviewed in design and what the lease made has in the future. The first thing you do when you provision OCR is typically we have an hour to 2 hour meeting to get all the setup completed. And we start with our agents. So normally we at least create 2 agents, a non-production and a production agent. And this is where we establish a secure connection or the communication that happens between Novacura and E3. Also, we normally for production would set up multiple agents for production. So it monitors the volume of transaction that happens. And those only kick in another agent, so stay efficient. And the end users aren't experiencing any time lag or the spinning wheel of that. And then once we have the agents installed, we set up our connectors to M3. So as an example, you look at one for our food and beverage environment. So within a connector, we have 3 environments, our development, test, and production. So you get to choose which of your 3 environments we're going to link to the developed and tested PRD. So as an example here, we have dev, that could be train, test, the other you see fit. And you also specify the agent group that's going to be used. So you just have one connector that essentially has all of your environments or whole process, right? So if you look over at tests, we can have a different URL in here. And this is all based on your ION API file that you generate from M3 that's established at the edge. You can also do other connections, like to a file system. So if you have a SFTP, go out browser for you need a connection to email inbox or view emails. So we have various connectors in there. Once you have these 2 established, the communication tends to be effective. So really the next thing is we need to define the user groups within Novacura. So by default, you have some administrator groups that your avenues will get placed into. Did they have full access to Novacura to modify everything, or they more user management, or the energy in developing applications? But the more important part is our end users, right? We need to define what groups they belong to, what packages they're going to have access to. So similar kind of M3 security system setup. So if you look at just an example, say supervisor, in here you read what apps does this group had access to, and then you would see a list of users that we rented that access, so you can manage everything within the sector. After that, we invite our users into Novacura. So it's a very simple task where you just click invite the user, you paste in all the emails that where you want to send an invitation, and they'll get a link that they could click on and establish their setup. As well as you identify what rules should they belong to when you send out this invitation. What have here? Now, when they have access, we have our last piece, which is the front part where you actually develop the apps. So I go into my application library. The way to look at it, the application libraries is sort of a menu. For example, you have inbound, and underneath it you might have PO receiving, PO put away, outbound, pick and pack. So you can structure your menu. And within each application package, you have the three sort of solutions within Novacura. You could build individual apps. Like here we have an INA query, the field services that we had built in Novacura. We had the portal pages, which Brett was mentioning for like B2B, or if any customers need access into the environments. And then as well as automation. These is like a scheduled run job. You determine the interval, how often it runs. Do we build out flow of what it's doing? So as an example, for running, we got timesheets that we create every night, right? So and the recalls into the M3 looks at the table of all the time transactions against the worker, or it's all finds all the records for the current day, collects all the data around it, number of hours, expenses, and so on. And then we actually build a PDF within Novacura and then send that at the IDM with all the attributes, so it links to the work order. And this is where they beat it out more for it, that warranty claims that goes down to a fall, for example. It mandate this kind of. But once we have our applications built, so you start in the development environment, and then we have our deployment feature. So if I go in here, you choose the application that you want to deploy. We say deploy to test for production. So let's dip ready test. And are full of all the versions of the application. So as I'm building it, I might commit a version, initial draft, and then I have version 2 where I make some changes. So you could have the notes in here that identified what changes were made. And then we push it out to the test environment. And then same thing, if you push out an inversion, but there happens to be issue, maybe it wasn't tested well enough, it's easy enough to use undeployed, and then push out a previous version. So there's really simple controls just all the way around, from the management of the users, provisioning, and how this deploys in various environments. Questions, careful. All right, so going into the breadth solution. So again, they have a root or field service technicians they dispatch. So what we initially started with was an inbox for the technicians. So on the app, they have Y icon for your field service, and it'll just show a number, how many work orders are assigned. All right, so when they click on it, it pulls up a calendar view. They'll flag which base has a job for, and then below it gets details of that job, work order, what's the address I'm going to, so forth, who's the customer. Did select it job, and we ended up laying it on a central screen where they will execute all their transactions. So in the job detail screen and over here, you give the further information, such as the customer names, the work order, what's the equipment I'm working on, the order entry, keep all many notes that I'm going to read, what's the current meter readings, etc. And on the side, we have what we call 10 steps. So these by default are hidden, but you can expand them to pull out extra information, such as what's the address I'm going to. And they can click on the address, takes into Google Maps, or gives them directions to the job. We had the equipment details, what open work orders. So we have this piece of equipment. What's the last 20 work orders you completed and all the detail around it. Same thing around the customer. How many open work orders does this customer have? And same thing, how many jobs have we completed for our previously. For the bar, we're going to build this functionality to show the current transactions against the work order. So they'll see all their time entries that they've done. They'll see all their expenses. So they have an idea of, in this the day grass. And then towards the bottom, you can go see, they'll get a series of buttons where they can start, stop operations, start, stop travel time, go and report expenses, and then go in and do all their service inspections, and then finally closing out a short order under dock. So here are just some screens that we have where on the left-hand side, it's the service inspection task. So depending on the type of service they're running, we mandate that they have to complete a list of tasks to provide feedback against them. So we built in validations that they try to close out early. We loop them back to finish any inspection tasks that they may have forgotten it would be. And then the same thing on the expenses. So we provide a drop-down list of the expenses we want us to be able to infract M3. So mileage, hotel, material, things of that nature. And as well, if they forget to start, stop operation, here they can manually record the total time that it took up a job. As well in there, we could take pictures. So we built a new document type in M3 with various attributes. So when they take a picture, we sync that over to IDN and then it makes to the work order in M3. So if a manager or the front office, they can look in at 3, see any of the pictures they take. All right. So that's the app that we had developed, and it roughly took us from start to finish about a month to develop everything and do the first go live. So pretty quick turnaround for RIP to do this. And for the future, Crud is looking at a few additional things. Like I mentioned, the timesheet. So this is a PDS timesheet we're generating in Novacura based on that API data we're extracting from M3. So again, this runs nightly, and it could be, several, how many work orders, 10 to the 100 work orders where it done raised during the dipple timesheet per operation. And then we're sending this document back to M3 and IDEA so that if they do have any warranty claim with the OEM, they can apply that mandated timesheet for. And then lastly, this is what Greg mentioned on the management portal. This is just a way to be able to assign work orders out to the technicians. So it's a drag and drop functionality as well as a visual map of where the work orders are located. So use the different portals. So instead of using SharePoint, get away from using that management portal on Novacura. That was all we passed. There's a room for any questions or thoughts.
All right, I think that's it. But thank you everyone for coming up.